Okay, this is something that, first I want to say, sorry. Welcome to another episode of the Jokatech podcast. Brought to you by JT. This is a podcast centered around kind of a general topic. It is sports and boxing, but it's more from a theoretical approach, and it's also addressing the current state of mentality and intellect, as I often have addressed in the past. Now, often, this is something that this millennial generation isn't able to process whenever I bring it up. They don't understand how you can support, how you can be a fan of somebody if you don't agree with every single thing that they say. How can you disagree with somebody if you're a fan? You know, going back to Mayweather, the fact that I'm a huge fan of his body of work, but I don't agree with some of the decisions that he made in choice of opponents or in his approach to certain bouts or in his victory in one or two bouts. I watched the Maypac fight back in, 2013, whatever year it was. And I did live scorecards during the fight. Sometimes I forget to do that during events. I did do live scorecards during that bout, and I did watch. I watched actually a UK feed, and it was a clean feed because I actually paid for it. So I got a private internet room where I was able to view the fight in real time with no interruptions or anything like that. And I did a live round by round. I think the commentary was biased, both American and British. But I had it scored 115, 113 for Floyd when I first watched the fight. That's not without certain interruptions. And I've said many times in the past, I had no problem with them getting the victory in that fight. I just had a problem with the wide scorecards everybody had, and with the huge disparity with everybody saying that he murdered Pacquiao because they don't understand boxing. So all they know is that somebody is a defensive wizard normally, and he's in a fight with somebody who's normally a brawler or normally a volume puncher. Pacquiao's not a brawler. You're an idiot if you think he's a brawler. But somebody who's a volume puncher, a power puncher, a knockout artist, and the knockout artist, he's not knocking the other guy down. So that must mean that he's getting boxed silly. See how it goes back to inability to ascertain what you actually see with your eyes? They can only see what they're told they see. So they go off references and they're like, okay, so this is happening and this isn't happening. So that means I'm probably seeing this, right? Sad. But anyway, I didn't agree with that totally. When I went back round for round, did a replay, I had it a draw. Some people had a Pacquiao victory. I said it's really a Pacquiao victory, at best a draw for Mayweather when you really break it down. Even being generous, you can't give him 7 or 8 rounds. You just really can't do that. But I said Bina is a champion. I'm not angry. I just don't like the whole 120, 108 crap I'm hearing from people. But anyway, I said, I'm a fan of his work. And I've gone on many times talking about his stylistic approach to the craft, his passion for the sport that even he undermines at times. I said, I really admire that, and I'm a big fan of his work. Oh, how are you going to be a fan when you don't agree? No. I may not always agree with somebody, but when they come from a certain place that I can relate to and I understand, and they're a purist like myself, automatically I'm a fan. I don't always agree with the key subject of today's podcast, but I love him dearly, and that's Mr. Teddy Atlas. I've gone on many times in the recent past about his take on certain fights and how I don't agree with him, but when it comes to his approach to the sport, he was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they were discussing Mike Tyson, they were discussing corruption in boxing, they were discussing the Canelo Triple G fight, and I don't agree with all of his viewpoints, but I certainly agree with his ideology and his approach to boxing, because I really think that it's a sad time we live in where we're literally seeing the end of minds like that. Paulie Malignaggi is another one who is of that same vein. I think he's just a little too emotional at times, but he's another great boxing mind. I don't always agree with Paulie. He's another one I disagree with at times. But when it comes to his approach and his understanding and knowledge, man, him and Teddy Atlas are the last two actual thinking minds in boxing. That's it. That's it. That way of thinking is gone. That analytical, detailed, intellectual approach to the science, it's gone. That's gone. That is done. You're not going to see that anymore. After these guys shut up, it's over. Unless I get a job commentating somewhere. You just don't see it. Even amongst ex-fighters and current fighters, you just don't see that approach. You just don't see an understanding of just a passion for breaking down the X's and O's. And I laugh because I'm also thinking to myself, you know what? We always act like things are a surprise. There's no surprise. Everything is a byproduct of some type of pattern of occurrences. As video gaming fans, you hear in circles here and there, man, whatever happens to the Fight Night series? Why don't we have a Fight Night? When are they going to make the next Fight Night? There's no coincidence. There's no coincidence. When you have a major boxing pay-per-view event, you don't have to worry about a sold-out venue to go and see the fight. We live in a day and age where that sweet science, everything that encompasses it, there's no passion for it anymore. There's no passion for it anymore. It's gone. And it's really just not the shying away. Part of it is the emasculation of society and the feminization that's going on. Yeah, that's going on too with this generation. Definitely. The snowflake generation that's afoot. The millennials. But it's also an anti-intellect generation, as I've discussed many times. You see it there. One thing about boxing is what it encompasses, regardless of how corrupted it's become in some ways, it's really the sweet science. Even more so than MMA at this particular point. It's more technical. It's more in MMA, yeah, you have a lot of skill sets, you have a lot of stuff going on, but at the end of the day, it's more gladiator-like. Boxing, even though they use that reference a lot, it's less gladiator-like than a lot of other sports. It's very technical. There's not a whole lot that you can do with boxing, breaking it down. There's not a whole lot you can do outside of having to get to a technical, artistic aspect. You have to kind of come at that approach. And because it's just that kind of a science, you can't really
Now for a break.
So we're in an age right now where it's the age of the anti-intellect. And so it's no coincidence. In many circles, people who are, the few left that have some interest, and even when you look at that, when you look at the people that are so-called, quote-unquote, interested in boxing or in the arts, if you ever look at the way they're interested, it's warped. They like it, but they like it for indirect reasons. We're getting away from that age of Teddy Atlas. I'm looking at this podcast, and I'm listening to him just break down, just really passionately get into his take on the Triple G Canelo fight, boxing, corruption in the sport, and in the history of Mike Tyson, and how he just broke down how he's 0-5. And a lot of things he said about Mike Tyson, I've said as well. And just like he said people are going to slam him because they're going to think that with given my history with him, that kind of taints everything, and that I'm basically just speaking out in recourse or whatever. He said, no, but I'm seeing this honestly from an honest point of view, as an honest, pure observer. And it flew over everybody's heads. I'm reading the comments underneath the podcast, and I'm just rolling my eyes like, wow. I mean, it doesn't shock me at this point. It just never ceases to disgust me. Not a single intellect to be found. You could grab 500 people at random and haul them into a room and not find a single intellect, not find a single person among them that can understand, not even just break down, but just understand and comprehend to some degree where somebody like a Teddy Atlas is coming from. And not even just boxing, anything intellectual. You know, like I said on my record, Magnum Opus, the first one. How many times do you pull somebody aside these days and they specialize in, they're a connoisseur of X, Y, or Z. And then you start to get into any type of a deep discussion about X, Y, or Z with them, and they can't hang with you for more than 2 seconds before they're shooing you away, ignoring you, or changing the subject. Because they can't get into any type of deep discussion. But that's what you do. This is what you live. But you can't get too deep into it. So what do you stand for? What do you represent? What do you know? Nothing. That's the generation we're in. There's no need to have any type of deep knowledge of what you do. Passion is unnecessary. Just be a mindless drone and just float about and just seek the next debauched moment. That's this generation. That's one of the many things that disgusts me. So I'm reading these comments and people are just laying into him. Oh, you're stupid. Oh, you didn't know. You're talking about Evander Holyfield. This dude calls Evander Holyfield 6'4", 6'5". And he goes on a whole little list about the losses that Mike took in his career and how monstrous these people were. Danny Green was a beast, right? Evander Holyfield was pegged to get destroyed by Mike Tyson. Like Teddy Atlas broke down, if Mike Tyson was the Alexander the Great, and I say this as a fan of Mike Tyson, which millennials won't be able to process. How are you a fan when you're it's not about laying into somebody, being honest. If I'm your friend and I see you about to light yourself on fire, by this generation's definition, I'm not your friend if I stop you. Because why am I not supporting you doing that? That's this generation's mentality. That's how stupid they are. So this dude had a bunch of stellar wins, but Teddy Atlas broke down why he's 0-5 or 0-6. He never had a real fight. And I've said this many times before. He was never tested. You judge a fighter by when they have to overcome adversity. If you go through your whole career and every single time, and I've said this about other competitors too, people who went their whole careers and they were never tested. They never had to overcome or adjust in a fight ever. They dominated, and whenever they were brought to a place where it was a step-up fight, they lost each and every time. You never won. And then he went into his background, he broke down things. I didn't even really know the true depth of all that. But the way he broke it down with his past in Brooklyn, I said, wow, you know what? That's a true point too. In the end, you are a reflection of your past experiences and your response to them. But people just didn't process what he said. You know, I'm not even going to paraphrase everything he said in the podcast. If you have any type of respect for intellectualism, you can go and listen to it. You can go and look it up on YouTube. A lot of knowledge came out in that interview. A lot of passion. He talked about custom models, some of his last days. I said, wow, it was a wealth. Like, you really haven't heard Teddy speak like that in a while. And I commented on it. I said, you know something? This video is a gem, but it was wasted on 99% of his viewers. 99% of the people watching that, all they do is flame it, call it a joke, laugh, clown the video, and then walk away. You just got a bunch of knowledge pouring in a video. That's this generation. You could give them a huge nugget of knowledge that they should be thanking you and paying you for. And they will curse you and clown you, spit on it, and walk away. That's this stupid snowflake generation. So it's no wonder why we're not going to see another Fight Night. There's a reason why we haven't seen one since Fight Night Champion. Fight Night Champion came out quite a few years ago. There's no passion for it. There's no passion for something that is completely a bare naked science. That's all about honesty. Like they say, the ring is a circle of truth. People aren't about that. They're not about straightforward intellectualism. They're not. If they can't attach analytics to something or something monetary or something that makes it more political, if they can't attach that to it, to analyze it, they can't analyze it. See, like I was saying before, yeah, you still see football, baseball at the top of the heap, basketball at the top of the heap. You still see that approach because you can approach those using just team analytics. Whenever you hear people talk about stuff like that, they talk about salary caps, trades, acquisitions, etc. You don't hear them talk about stepping and moving, positioning yourself a certain way. You don't hear people talk like that. With boxing, that's the only way you can talk about boxing. Boxing has a lot of corrupt politics when it comes to its judging, but that's not what defines the art itself. In order to talk about boxing, you have to talk about positioning. You have to talk about approach, generalship, engaging, sequences, counters, aggression. You have to talk about science. You can't get around it. There's no analytics. There's no, oh, this guy was traded here. Oh, well, this guy's salary was here. There's no discussion there with boxing. So it doesn't interest them. The sports that you can do that with, they'll talk about that because that's a talking topic for them. When it comes to the straight visceral nature, the straight up approach to a science, they don't want anything to do with that. Anything intellectual, this generation wants nothing to do with it. That's why you don't hear jazz music like that anymore. You don't see art being championed like that anymore. You don't see poets and essayists being championed like that anymore. They're clown. This generation has no use for any of that. It's sad. But that was a really, 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 really good podcast. And one thing you gotta respect Rogan for, Rogan's intellectual. He has his quirks here and there, but he knew. And the people in the comments say, "Oh, I never seen Joe Rogan be quiet like this. Oh man, that's weird. Kudos to him, man. He was actually quiet. That's strange. Usually he cuts in. I guess, all sorts of jokes and stuff." Like, no idiots, no stupid fools. He was quiet because he recognized that he was hearing a lot of knowledge being dropped down, a lot of history. And he doesn't come from a boxing background, but he respects art. And he's hearing all of this knowledge coming from this dude. And he is quiet. But totally missed by these idiots. And I was just thinking about that while I'm like, man, we don't get another Fight Night. Fight Night was a cool game, but it's like, you're not going to see that. It's a cream puff generation. Even when it comes to like adventure games, I'm looking at stuff, I'm like, man, surely the feminization. Because I noticed for the past few years, I'm a Metroid fan. I played Beyond Good and Evil. I'm not against a heroine lead in the game. I played many games with a heroine lead. But when a system launches and you're getting fresh IPs for a console or whatever, or it's been a long drought, when you want new titles, male gamers still make up the majority of gamers. But yet, there's been a huge surge in the craving for female lead protagonist games. And I'm scratching my head like, why is that? You have a lot of fighting games and a lot of adventure games, some of them with all-girl cast. A lot of them with predominant girl cast, where you have like one male character. And I'm like, what's with the swing? And I know that they're trying to open up the FGC to more females, but it goes deeper than that. Because when you look at what's being asked by for the fans are asking for more of these games. And right now, I'm playing another game with a female lead. I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn. And I love the game to death. But in the game, you're going to have certain engagements. You're going to have certain engagements that are geared towards a female, where male characters will make compliments to her and then she responds in kind. And I'm like, this is for a girl. Why is it that we're seeing an increased demand from guys for games like this? Because we're getting into that generation. Even in Zelda, there's a costume and there's certain sequences of the game where he has to dress up like a girl. He has to dress up like a sheik. In order to get into a certain town. And then that's fine, and that's all good and well for the game. But that went on to become a meme and a whole costume and a whole character. And I'm not even going to get into the spin-offs and the things that people have done on the internet. Glorifying this character. Almost like a symbol of attractiveness. Dudes. I'm like, this is a guy dressed in a dress. This is a guy in a dress. But it's suddenly okay to be like, wow. It's just a different generation. Totally different generation. But that's why you won't see anything intellectual anymore. You're not going to see that stuff at all. And you're not going to see speakers like that anymore. You know, the new voice of boxing, and I respect him and all, but a guy like Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman doesn't know boxing. He's been around boxing. He's been around boxing for years, covering fights. I remember when he was a pup in the game. I remember he was younger. And, you know, I like his disposition and all. He's the type of dude that I thought would kind of really learn. And, you know, he has some framework of knowledge, but he doesn't really understand boxing. Not like Teddy Atlas. But he's making that transfer, and he's going to become the new Teddy Atlas for this generation. The guy who thinks like the people, favors, you know, the blockheaded approach to the aggressor is the guy who's a better fighter, yada, yada, yada. Just a simple, mindless approach. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. I just had to speak on that because it never ceases to, it doesn't amaze me anymore, but it never ceases to disgust me. I'm watching a podcast. This is a guy, like I said, I disagree with him quite often lately. But you have to know when you're hearing knowledge. It's just sick. I'm like going back to when I was younger. It didn't matter if you understood it all. Everyone stopped and paused when someone was spitting knowledge. I never thought when I was a kid that I would see a day, one day, where you would have that happen and everyone would just talk over them or clown them. Somebody spitting knowledge. that you don't get a chance to hear often. And we're all just crowding around and clowning the person. I never thought I'd see the day where that happens on a consistent basis. That's the reason why I kind of withdraw from a lot of circles now. It is what it is. That's what it's going to be. So stay tuned for the next episode. I have some projects in the works. I don't know how much of them I'm going to release. I'm kind of hitting that point of disgust, but we'll see.